So dudes, I had a call with John Ubisoft yesterday, and you'll be surprised by what I got out of it. This video is sponsored by Ubisoft, so thank you. Click the link in the description to learn more about Rainbow Six Siege. So basically, I had what they call a fireside chat. Rapid fire, back and forth sort of interview questions. I wasn't able to record it, but they did let me write down the responses. I got to speak with the live content director, Christopher Budgeons, a game designer who works on playlists, Robert Call, and the creative director, Alexander Karpazis. You may recognize Chris and Alex from the press releases that they do, coinciding with new content releases every 3 months. Me and a couple other content creators were able to talk to Alex and Chris about Ranked 2.0. We spent a lot, and I mean a lot of time talking about Ranked 2.0, but this channel is famous for its operator guide, so I'll talk about that portion of the interview first, which I had one-on-one with Alex. He prefers Alex. Allegedly, nobody calls him Alexander, except the school principal, from what I'm told. Before we get to the interview, get the Rainbow Six Siege membership for exclusive access to new monthly content, a cosmetic bundle, legendary items, 10 battle pass levels, and 1 Bravo pack for just $9.99 a month or $79.99 a year. My first question was as follows. Rainbow Six Siege has been adding characters for a long time, but nothing lasts forever. At what point would you consider the game mechanically, quote, solved, and not necessitate the need for more operators? Perhaps moving to a 1 operator per year model? Apex Legends, for instance, was rumored to stop adding legends at some point. He told me they run off of the guiding star of 100 operators. They are very serious about that. They are not joking when they say they want to support this game for a really long time. Personally, I hear and I read a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth concerning Rainbow Six Siege, but it never dies. Every time people think it's out, it manages to bounce back in some kind of profound way. So I don't think Ubisoft is lying when they say, we want 100 characters and we're gonna get 100 characters. Do I think it's gonna be an easy road? No. No, it's not. But I do trust that they are committed to that vision. He emphasized that the game has a large catalog of characters, and that often necessitates the revisiting of some older characters. He said that the current cadence of putting out operators is comfortable, and they can do lots of cool things. Okay, so they're committed to 100 characters. So, I had a follow-up question already planned. What boxes must be checked for operators to be added to Rainbow Six Siege? What does the ideation process look like? And how is the building arranged to get it done? He said they have a couple of criteria. One of the criteria concerns the art direction. This is a conversation that can be controversial depending on how far you want to go with it. But what I will say, coming from the creative director of Rainbow Six Siege, and he made this clear to me, diversity is important. Now, I'm not stupid. I understand what that word is going to make people say. But for those watching the video that are interested in approaching it in good faith, I will also emphasize, he didn't just mean diversity in terms of the topics that people will rage bait about on YouTube and Twitter. Alex emphasized nationality in addition to that. That is the point of Team Rainbow, a national coalition designed to tackle the world's biggest security challenges. That being said, when he emphasized, hey, we're trying to get to 100 characters, that also tells me there are tons of countries that we haven't included in the game that are up for consideration. So to me, that can include Finland, Cyprus, Indonesia, Egypt, the Baltic states. Those are, as far as I can tell, all probably up for consideration. I'm sure it's been talked about. So the national mission, the national approach to Rainbow Six Siege, to Rainbow, is not irrelevant to Ubisoft. It is at the forefront of the design process from the art standpoint, not from the mechanical standpoint, how the character presents himself, how the art team approaches it. So then he added, for the gameplay side, they have a specific term. It's called Rational Game Design Role Analysis. So that's a term that's been floating around a little bit over a year now at Ubisoft. And I heard the term and I thought, oh, wow, you know, this is like something out of gamer college. And Alex laughed and emphasized that this is something that is an internal term, right? This is a design philosophy that they have come up with in a vacuum on their own. And it basically encompasses the complexity of finding a role for an operator within the cast. So they have to bring something to the table that is unique. So they'll consider all of these terms: roaming plus anti-intel, roaming plus architect. Does it fill a gap? Does it fill a mobility gap, a coverage of gadgetry gap, lethality gap, utility, debuffs, roam clearing? Everything falls within specific spectrums of purpose and skill. And if they don't have a home for that character, right? If it doesn't have something that makes it stand out from the rest of the crowd, or at least, iterate on something another character has done, but they have something that they offer to the table that nobody else is bringing, if it steps on the toes of another operator too much, or it's not fun, they will can it. They will throw it in the trash. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that these guys, were basically just an operator design factory. Everybody in that team is constantly testing and stress testing different ideas on different builds, on different computers. Operators are at the heart of Rainbow Six Siege, and from what Alex told me, I have the impression that it's at the heart of the workflow. It's at the heart of your day-to-day at Ubisoft Inc., right? At John Ubisoft Inc. You are concerned with operators constantly. Alex told me they are working on 3 to 4 operators at any given point in different stages. So people talk about, the content actual, output seems slow. If this is, a lot of workflow for them now, I can't imagine, I cannot imagine what it was like back around year 2, year 3, when they were following that content model of just like, holy crap, this game is dead. We have to put out as much freaking content as humanly possible. I cannot imagine what that crunch looked like, but I will say, from what I was told, the image I have in my head of Ubisoft is not that of a lazy studio. I also asked, in terms of actual game design philosophy, about spreadsheet balancing. Now, I said, Ubisoft has been accused of spreadsheet balancing. I managed to avoid saying, I have accused Ubisoft of spreadsheet balancing. So, Ubisoft has to watch the video anyway. You caught me, right? It's no secret. Ubisoft watches my videos even when they're not sponsored, so I'm sure they've caught wind, of any time I come across a balance thing and I'm like, dude, what the heck? Why would you do this? And the rest of the question encompassed, how do you avoid fixating too much on individual data points, right? Like little outliers, little things on the sheet. How do you contextualize the data within the game space and how it plays out in game? Do you run in-house tests with fellow devs, pros, etc.? And Alex told me devs are always playing the game. There is a dedicated lounge. There are 5 different builds every single week. So again, another myth busted. The Ubisoft devs don't play the game. They do play the game. They play it a lot. Do they play the game like Pengu? No, because Pengu is in, the 0.08 percentile of Rainbow Six Siege players. And the devs shouldn't be expected to play at that level because it's not their job. There are pro play sessions either remotely or in-house. They do have pros come in, play, debrief, share feedback. The studio has a user research lab that brings players from upwards of 2,000 people throughout the building. So I think people get this idea because Ubisoft Montreal, right, isn't Ubisoft Paris, that it's small. No. Ubisoft is... It is difficult to describe how big Ubisoft is. The point is, they have a ton of people. They have a ton of feedback. They are constantly cross-referencing feedback. And they run a lot of different tests in different environments. So they will run tests with different groups of people, pros, average Joes, devs. They will take all of those individual data points and they will run clustered experiments in separate environments. They try to maintain good experimental design through all of this. So I think this might be one of the contributing factors to the sense that Ubisoft may take, 8 million years to nerf Solus, for example. But in that same breath, Alex did tell me that perception-based balancing is necessary. Fun factor is necessary. Fenrir was a good example of this. In terms of the data, in terms of what they were looking at, the numbers, the lethality, efficiency, win-loss rate, the data said he was fine. But the community said, this guy is extremely frustrating to play against. He disrupts the gunplay. There's no way to really counterplay it. It's a pain in the butt. And the changes in Season 2 were based on perception-based feedback. That includes the Fenrir change. That includes the Solus change. So I think especially with the Solus thing, it's extremely difficult to balance a game like this because what is felt in one experiment group is not going to be the same thing that another experiment group feels. And at the same time, you can't just ignore what somebody else is going through. You have to look at the bigger picture and try to come up with something that everybody can get behind. But he emphasized good, sound experimental design is important. They take a long time to get around to changes to make them official because they are constantly cross-referencing things. And it gave me the impression that they aren't going to say yes or no to something until they have absolute certainty that it's a good idea to do. I had a little bit of extra time towards this portion of the interview. Mind you, I'm not reading to you the interview questions in chronological order of how it happened, just, for algorithm maxing. I did have a little bit of extra time, and then I just shot this question from the hip because we had about 3 minutes left. And I made a little bit of a joke out of it. I said, where is the secret lair where the pros show up in hoods around candlelight and say, you will nerf the R4C? Where is the secret Pro League Illuminati, right? What's going on? And everybody got a little bit of a kick out of that. But they said pros will break or stress test whatever idea or feature is in the game as fast as possible. And that is useful. That is not an irrelevant data set in terms of experimental design that is important to have. They don't have the skill set to do some of the insane things that you see in a competitive match. And he also emphasized that's the most rewarding side of it. It's not balancing the game based on how a pro will play it. It's balancing the game based on what absolute insane thing you can see. What crazy, crazy thing, isolated variable can you look at and go, holy crap, that's really cool, or, oh no. And that's kind of how they take it. He says he treated pros like a QC team times a million. If something's going to go wrong, it will, and pros will find the closest A to B path and absolutely break it. And for a game as complex as this, I think that's necessary. I think that is 100% needed. Otherwise, it's going to be a big mess. And people are going to feel very harsh ramifications of somebody, abusing an easy, seal clubbing tactic, in other words. But yeah, so that's the game design philosophy that I thought was really interesting. What I was really fascinated by in that context that Alex gave me was just the actual day-to-day workflow, what the work looks like inside the building, how people are allocated, how things take place. I think that just might be because I'm insane and I'm just like a weird, crazy person. I'm really fascinated by admin and, how admin gets done, how people, accomplish things in a large environment. It's, it's just my brand of whatever kind of fixation you want to call it. But yeah, really, really interesting insights of the design philosophy at Ubisoft and how it pertains to operators. So I also asked a number of questions relating to the art and the thematic direction that the game took. Now, something that's interesting to note is that Alex was actually the art director for year 5 to year 6. He was the art director at Siege from 2020 to 2022. Now, because I'm weird, apparently, I'm the only person that thinks that, the Siege lore and the Siege art has some legs, has some breathing room, places that it could go. I wanted to ask Alex about the tonality. So I asked him, do you feel that the art direction has made an effort to have a bit more grit than it used to, evoking that of the original Tom Clancy licenses from the 90s? Particularly with the arrival of Deimos, how difficult is it to navigate heated political topics the Tom Clancy brand was known for while maintaining a sense of internal logic and realism? In Operation New Blood, you made it clear that the recruits of Rainbow come from a variety of military and police backgrounds. That wording means something to the average Tom Clancy fan. And he said, it is intentional to have more storytelling and world building actually present in the maps that you play and the gameplay that you experience. They are a long way from things like PvE. They are working very hard on a next generation of AI. At a certain point, we riffed about that. I did mention to him, it's very strange to me how nobody is talking about what's going on with the AI at Ubisoft. The AI is performing, complex behaviors that aren't typically seen in PvE style environments. Now, it's not to say that a good design team can't make relatively simple opponents have really interesting quirks to them and a set, tree of responses based on what the player does. At least the term behavior trees was used for AI a little bit further back. It's a little bit dated now. We're getting into a point where we're making AI a lot more adaptive. It can come up with conclusions to things like a person would. It can think. The AI can do runouts with impacts and then look at you on the roof of a building, with relatively quickly, not perfect. It's still got a little bit of a robotic element to it, but it is performing, complex chains of maneuvers that, we have to practice as people a little bit, at least before we get to a point where we're confident with it. And so Alex continued that they're not ignoring the AI portion. He doesn't believe it's unreasonable to assume that sort of stuff could be done in a PvE environment. Ubisoft is doing something other studios are not doing at the moment, and it is an option later down the road, but this is an FPS game, and that is what they're focused on, the PvP competitive side of it. Now, it has been intentional that there is a bit more grit, that they circle back to why Rainbow was formed. That does mean global conflict. It can interweave things like politics, and it gets away, and Alex said this, his exact words, gets away from internal squabbling. I can figure out what he's getting at. I can figure out what he's inferring. I'm sure that he's referencing the stadium stuff, the whole Team Cali versus Team Ash stuff. So if Siege was an anime, that's a filler arc. It was, it wasn't perfect. It had some weird quirks about it, but it had a couple of good ideas. Thanks for trying. At the end of the day, they want this game to be what they are making right now. I showed him the copy I have of Rainbow Six Siege on my bookshelf. I don't know if he caught a glance at the other books I have. Books, often pertaining to security topics, geopolitics. Regardless, my audience demographic, I guess, didn't seem completely irrelevant to Alex. World building, environmental storytelling, like what you did with Tower, where Deimos attacks the tower. It's blown up. There's debris, crap all over the place from the attack. How much they can get into that, I'm not sure. I don't know, what the plan is, per se. Another example would be Harry's recorder that Deimos picked off of him and kept in his office. Who's going to pay attention to this stuff? Not a lot of people. I'm sure there are people getting ready to comment, why does G even care about this stuff? I'm a creative person. I like seeing people do creative things, even if it's not necessarily seen by everybody. What Alex emphasized to me is they want to make something that they're personally proud of. And that's a passionate team. That's a team that cares about what they're doing, and I think that's important. To follow up, I also asked, how difficult would it be to do an outbreak mode? Make a whole content patch, for instance, out of a PvE co-op style environment. Outbreak, if you don't remember it, was received pretty well. It was the reason that they made Rainbow Six Extraction. Now, I didn't talk about Rainbow Six Extraction, but it did occur to me, there are legs. There is breathing room. And it kept itching me. It still itches me to this day. How difficult would it be to reboot the original series? How difficult would it be to just make that game again, a modern reimagining of that game, the ones that came out in the 90s, with this modern cast? I also asked, will Siege always be an FPS game? We have a board game, for instance. How difficult would it be to make, per se, an XCOM-style turn-based game? Now, a team in Montreal made Rainbow Six small. Now, I didn't even know this game came out, which showed how clued in I was to the scene. It's clear that I've taken a break. I took a break for a pretty decent amount of time. And I'll say, this isn't something that I'd be interested in playing. But if people enjoy it, which apparently people do, if you look at the reviews, what am I going to say? Am I going to tell these people, wow, what's wrong with you? Don't you realize that Tom Clancy is rolling in his grave? It is unbelievable to me how much that line is thrown around unironically, and there is just no awareness of how it's reached meme status. The man has been dead for over 10 years. I don't think it's, very respectful, to be quite honest, to just, keep invoking the name of a dead man who made fiction for a living. I love the mission statement of Rainbow. I love the thematic concept of it. Diplomacy is something that I hold dear to my heart. And I think that if there's no room for something whimsical or fun or silly, right, with this license, that is avoiding the bigger picture of what the game represents and what it's trying to say. Rainbow Six Small is not the main course, but what is interesting to me about the existence of this game and the way that Alex brought it up was that it shows that there is something there. He told me there is a willingness for players to see the world through different lenses and different gameplay loops. And the team in Siege is always going to be focused on FPS games, but that doesn't ignore the teams at Ubisoft and what they are working on. And so he gave me kind of a sly smile and said, I can't talk about everything. And I said, I understand. But he did say there is an appetite for it, and they know that. So essentially, what it boils down to, I learned a lot about Ubisoft and how they develop and work on the game internally. What the actual structure looks like. What does the workflow look like? And at the end of the day, Ubisoft is a company comprised of people. Game devs are people. Ubisoft Montreal has a lot of people. And when you have a lot of people, things are going to take longer to get done, as opposed to something like what's going on with Arrowhead and Helldivers 2. But what I think a lot of people ignore when we talk about live service games with the broad lens is that even those games have problems. Even those games have really, really contentious issues where the community doesn't just disagree with the corporate, overlords or whatever, right? Johnny Silverhand. They have arguments with the devs. And a lot of the problems, or associated problems we have with live service gaming now were started by darlings like Valve. Valve was a darling of the industry that was immune from criticism for so long until they started working on Deadlock. How dare they? How dare Valve make a game that is essentially a combination of their two most popular licenses? I can't imagine why a developer who is familiar with the design philosophy of this thing and the design philosophy of this thing would want to put those two things together. Why would they do that? Unbelievable. How dare Respawn make Apex Legends? How dare they? Oh, they liked Battle Royales? They were really into Battle Royales in the studio and they just decided to make one of their own volition, voluntarily? How dare they? How dare they? Don't they know? Don't they understand? No, they do understand. The feedback that matters to Ubisoft isn't just Twitter. It's not just Reddit. It's not just YouTube comments. They catalog tons of information from tons of different sources, and then they ultimately kind of come together, synthesize all those different sources, and try to come up with something that is good for everybody. Not good for everyone who dislikes the game. That is a key component, because there are a lot of people who don't like the game. So it looks like to me that Ubisoft is trying to make a game for people who like the game, not people who don't like the game. The people who don't like the game because it's live service or it has esports or whatever, they are never, ever, ever going to like it. Nothing that Ubisoft does is going to make those people happy. So they shouldn't try to. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. So, in my opinion, let Ubisoft make Rainbow Six Small. Let Ubisoft make Rainbow Six Extraction. Because eventually, they might make something that you like. And wouldn't that be great? What if a game company made a game that you liked? What if you played that game and you liked the game they made? Wouldn't that be interesting? That's not gonna happen. Who said? You? This game is simultaneously dead and Jinxie is like I think he's still the most popular Twitch streamer right now. Those two statements are not compatible. One of those statements has to be true. Either the game is dead and nobody cares, or it's popular among its select audience. I don't think the game is dead. I don't think nobody cares. I think it's popular among its select audience. Ubisoft is aware of that. Does everybody talk about it? Does it have the same, invisible staying power that something like Counter-Strike does? No. Because it's not Counter-Strike. It's Rainbow Six Siege. Gaming is the only genre where people do this. It's the only genre where people do like the equivalent of going to a Canadian football game and they're like, yeah, this is cool, but it's not American football. Like, nobody else does that. It only happens with gaming on the internet. And I have a lot of theories for why that's the case, but that's not the topic of this video. But overall, fascinating conversation that I had with Alexander Karpazis, and I would love to have more conversations like this. And if this video does well, I'd like to make more videos like it. I did leave out talks about Rank 2.0 because I don't think my audience is like particularly interested in that topic as much as the operator design and the gameplay design portion. So if you guys want to see me do a video on Rank 2.0, let me know in the comments and I'll consider it. But once again, thank you to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video. Go check out the Rainbow Six membership at the link in the description. And I'm so excited to remain a part of this community, and I'm looking forward to making more content. Deuces.